people, this is Sonali, the melodramatic bookworm. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here today with my reading wrap up for the month of July 2020. So what I've decided to do is film this wrap up in two parts. Going forward, I will film my wrap ups for each month in two parts. One at the middle of the month, around 15-16, when I've completed a certain number of books. I'll film the first half of my wrap up in the middle of the month, and then at the end of the month, after the month is done, then I'm going to film another part talking about the books that I've read in the second half of the month. So that's easier for me because my memory, as you know, is trash. To remember like 10 to 12 books, the plots of 10 to 12 books at the end of each month is like exhausting for me. So I've decided that I'll do my wrap-ups this way. It's easier like that, and it does not put that much of a load on my shoulders at the end of the month. So today is the 15th of July, and as of today I have read 5 books. I have finished reading 5 books and I'm reading 2 other books. So let's talk about the books that I've read so far this month, and let me share with you what I think of them. But before we get on with this video, you know, self-plug, it's coming. I make book related videos on this channel, and occasionally a few travel related and a few movie related videos as well. So if you like my content and if you like what you see, then don't forget to hit subscribe and click on the bell icon so that you can stay updated as when I post new videos. So the first book that I read in July was a carryover from June, and that was Birthday by Meredith Russo. This is the story of Morgan and Eric. They have grown up together. They were born on the same day, and they are growing up together, but it feels like their quest for their identity, for them to look at who they are, it sort of pulls them apart from each other. And what happens when Morgan is trying to find himself, it forms the entire story. It's also about Eric's battles with what he feels for Morgan. See, the thing about this book is that I really enjoyed reading it. I loved how poignantly the author has written the story of Morgan, and how she is trying to find her own identity in the world and in her own body. So she looks inwards and tries to understand herself as well. So that is one thing about this book that's really amazing. It's written in a flowy, easy to read language, but still it will hit you where it counts. That's what it is. But the thing is, I've mentioned this in in a couple of other videos as well that have gone up before this, but I found out after this book came home that this author has a history of abuse towards their ex-partner. Being a trans person herself, Meredith Russo has been accused of abusing their ex-partner, and I'm like, how could you do that? How could you do that? So I was really put off by it. By that time I had already gotten this book. I had completely forgotten that this was the author about whom I had read a few months ago, that she was involved in this abuse and all. So I was like, okay, this is that same author, so I'm not going to go ahead and read any more of this author's works, because that's a shit thing to do. I'm not going to buy any more of this book. See, the thing is, I really want to recommend this book to you, but I also don't want to recommend this book to you because of the said reasons. The second book that I read in July is called The Angel's Beauty Spots by K.R. Meera. I love K.R. Meera's writing. I read The Poison of Love earlier this year and I absolutely loved it. The translation was not that great, but I really love the points that she makes and the emotions that she brings, that she evokes within us as you read the story. And that's what I had in mind, and that's what I was expecting when I went into The Angel's Beauty Spots. The Angel's Beauty Spots is a collection of 3 short stories, the first of which is called The Angel's Beauty Spots. I usually mostly like open endings, but somehow the first novella in this collection is called The Angel's Beauty Spots, and it's somehow left off at a point where I was not happy with how it ended. It's not about me not being happy, it's about me being dissatisfied with how it ended. So I really wanted to know what happens to that child at the end of the story, and I did not find out. But I must say that the other two novellas were really, really good. They like tugged at my heart. I felt things that I knew I would feel when I was reading K.R. Mira's books, and those were what gave me the feeling that yes, finally I'm reading a K.R. Mira book that will make me feel things. It was the second and the third novella that pushed the book up, and I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The third book that I read in July is called Orphaned, written in Kannada by S.L. Bhairappa and translated into English by Sandeep Balakrishna. This is the story of a goat herd, the family of a goat herd called Kalinga Gowda, where all the firstborn sons are called Kalinga Gowda. The cows that they own have a history. They are called the Punyakoti cows, and they were the cows who kept their word. The story goes thus that a cow of the Punyakoti breed was grazing when a tiger came upon it, and so when the tiger was about to pounce on it and eat it, the cow said that please let me go, I will go feed my calf, my child, and I will come back to you. So what the cow did was do exactly that. So the tiger is moved when the cow actually comes back and keeps its word, and it is so moved that it's like, so I cannot take the life of a cow who keeps its word, so it flings itself off a cliff and gives up its life. The Punyakoti cow comes back to its calf, and the lineage goes thus that the milk that's given by the Punyakoti cows is some of the best. So this story is not just about them, it's also about the people who own them. So it goes from Kalinga Gowda, the guy who we start off the story with, then his son, and then his son, the grandson of the patriarch of this family. So what happens is how the youngest Kalinga Gowda, he goes abroad, comes back, and how his manner of thinking changes, how the village treats his manner of thinking, and how people see the cow which is treated as a goddess in India, and it's placed on a pedestal. There is a reasoning given behind the why the cow is treated as such, how outsiders see the cow, how they are treated, and how even familial responsibility plays a part in this whole thing. It's a great book to read. Like if you want to understand why the cow is treated the way it is in India, then I think this is a great book you would want to read. I loved reading this book because of the different perspectives that it gives, and there are places in the book which will make you really, really angry, but then again you also have to think from both perspectives. You should have open mind when you go into this book, see both sides, and then decide for yourself which one you think is the most right one, which one you align most with. So that's something that you need to keep in mind when you go into this book. But please do read it, it's really good. The translation was not that great. I felt like it could have been so much better, but then again it gets across what it wants to say to us in a really amazing manner. So I think that part can be ignored a little. I gave Orphaned by S.L. Bhairappa 4 stars out of 5. The fourth book that I read in July is called Heidi by Johanna Spyri. This is the story of Heidi, who is brought to the mountains by her aunt to live with her grandfather, but then few days pass, and then the aunt comes back to take her to someone she knows as a companion for an ill child. So when she goes to Frankfurt, she's living in the city and she misses the mountains, she misses the open air, and she sort of becomes she closes in on herself. But then the family that she's living with, they realize that this is having a bad effect on the child, and they send her back. And when she comes back to the mountains, somehow she starts blooming again. See, I'm doing a very bad job of explaining it, but this is so beautiful. Heidi is an 8-year-old, and to see her so bright, so full of energy, so full of positive energy, optimism. She learns so many lessons across this book, and she's so receptive to all those lessons, even if it's from her friend or her grandfather or her aunt or the doctor or the person that she is living with in Frankfurt, anyone it could be, and she will accept that lesson, and she will think about it. She will say, oh yeah, that's right, and then she will live that lesson. And I love this so much. reading this book made me want to, just go to that mountains. Like, I feel like if I'm climbing those mountains, I will see their hut. I will see Heidi gambling about in a clearing or somewhere, and there are goats all around her. And I love this book. Like, it's so pure, it's so positive. There's no person in the story, there's no character in the story who's evil. Okay, like you would expect in a children's classic to have like a good guy and a bad guy, and then good triumphing over evil. No, it's not that. This is about a girl who finds out the good in everyday life, and the people around her teaching her through goodness what it is to be a good person and to lead a good life. And I don't know if I'm even making sense anymore, but this book is a must read. It's a beautiful children's classic, and I loved it, and I'm glad I read it. This is one that I will absolutely suggest to everyone, especially if you're a beginner. You will love this book. I gave Heidi by Johanna Spyri 4 out of 5 stars. So the fifth book that I read in July was Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami. This was part of the 20 books that I want to read in 2020 list, and I really enjoyed reading this. It is full of gore and weirdness, like a typical Murakami book, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, but Murakami is the only author, so far at least, that I've found that I will accept anything from. Like, he could say anything, leeches are falling, like snakes are crawling through places, anywhere, like your house is made of animals or something, some weird shit like that, and I will accept it. I will say yes. I don't even need a reason for that, and I will take it. I will absolutely take it. So this is the story of Kafka Tamura, who is 15 years old, and he's run away from home because he can't take the weight of the expectations that are on his shoulders. His father has told him a prophecy, so he can't take that, and he has run away to a library in Takamatsu, if I'm not mistaken. And then there's Nakata, who is an old man. He's 60 years old, and when he was a kid, he met with an accident along with a few other kids who recovered, but he did not recover. When he woke up, everything was wiped clean, and he somewhat became stupid. Like, he became dumb. He couldn't understand things that others could understand easily. So when these two are on parallel tracks and they meet, the tracks meet, these two people don't meet, but the tracks meet at some point in time. It's completely intertwined when you look at it at the end of the book, and I found it to be amazing. But also, the thing about this book is that when you're reading the book, you are pulled into the book, but somehow you are not able to move forward at a faster pace. Like, he takes you along, Murakami takes you along at his own easy pace. It's not technically easy because of the weirdness that's going on, but the pace that he has you on, it's something else. Like, you are taking it all in, but you just can't make yourself read faster than you already are. I don't know how good of an explanation that is, but this is also a book where you learn about your own morals, what you think about what's right and what's not, how you see the world, the perspective that Murakami has filled this book with. It gives you a different perspective on life. And I finished reading this book last night, and I still cannot explain properly what I feel about this book. But the thing about this book is that it has some atmospheric writing which will transport you to where the characters are and what they're experiencing at the moment. And whenever something shocking happens to them, it's like it affects you personally. There's something about the story that really sticks to you, be it the magical realism, be it the metaphors that he has filled inside this book and throughout the story. He has scattered them throughout, and when you find them, you're like, okay, I didn't know I was looking for this, but I'm glad I found it. It's that kind of a story. Yeah, this is probably a good place to start Murakami with, but I would also say that you need to be very open-minded when you want to read Murakami, because he has some weird gory stuff in there which I was gagging at it. and I put this book aside for a while. And the thing about this is I started this in June and ended this in July, in mid-July. So there's going to be a while that will take you to read this book. So be open-minded and go for this book. It will be worth it in the end. But I can understand if it doesn't work for you, because Murakami's writing style is not for everyone. For that matter, not every author is for everyone. So that's okay even if you don't like it. But if you want to go ahead and read it, open mind. I gave Kafka on the Shore 4 out of 5 stars. So that was the first part of my wrap up for July. I will meet you all at the end of July. So goodbye for now.